All right. Shalom, family. It's your brother Kanaiba coming at you once again with another video. Now, looking at the thumbnail, I'm definitely going to have to, shorten up the title of this video. But as you can see, looking at the thumbnail, it says Betty White dead at 99 on New Year's Eve. Was it natural causes or something more sinister? New Year's Day and the veneration of Janus. Okay? And then as you see in the middle, you have a depiction of Janus and the Pope. Okay? Of course, I'm going to touch on all of that, right? But like I just said, Betty White, she actually died today at 99 years old. And of course, today is New Year's Eve, right? Now, this is what's going to happen, okay? Now, of course, according to my critique, looking at things from a spiritual vantage point, I would say that this was a sacrifice. Now, based on what little information I have right now, okay, I really haven't gone too in depth. And, if and when I do, I'll probably make a completely separate video just dealing strictly with Betty White. But this video is mainly going to be about, Janus and New Year's Eve and New Year's and things like that. Okay. And originally I wasn't even going to do, a video or even talk about Betty White, but something led me to do so. And I'm going to show you why. Okay. When we actually go to the article on, the article done by TMZ. Okay. So, without further ado, because I know this is an interesting thumbnail, I know y'all ready to get to it. So, without further ado, let's get into the video. Okay? All right. So, this is the article from TMZ, and it says Betty White dead at 99. Right? And of course, it was posted today because it happened today, 12/31/2021. At 12:32 p.m. Okay, right afternoon, right? So first of all, let's point something out. When you look at TMZ, that's really just an allusion to Tammuz. Okay, that abbreviation TMZ. That's why the color scheme is black, white, and red. Okay, for the black mass. All right, that's dealing with sacrifice, right? And, this is just another reason why I say Betty White, I believe, just my critique, was sacrificed at 99, which is also significant. And it had to happen today on New Year's Eve. That's the dead giveaway. Okay, it happened today on New Year's Eve. Okay, now let's continue. So scrolling up a bit, and let's stop right here. Now remember, just a few minutes ago I said originally I wasn't even going to talk about Betty White in this particular video. Okay, but as soon as I started reading this article from TMZ, the first thing I saw, as you can see, look at the time. As soon as I saw that time, and you brothers that's in the know, you already know what I'm talking about, okay? As soon as I saw that, I said, yep, I definitely got to talk about it now, okay? This is definitely a sign, right? This number, whenever you see, 144, it's an allusion to 144, okay? I know it's 1144, but 144 is in there, okay? And I see this number all the time, right? So as soon as I saw that, I said, yep, that's the spirit. I got to talk about this, right? But anyway, the article goes on to say, a source close to Betty tells TMZ she didn't have any sudden illness, nor was she battling any particular ailment we're told she's believed to have died from natural causes. I call BS. Okay? She wasn't suffering from any illnesses or any particular ailment, but yet she just up and dies. Okay? Now, here comes the two-dimensional thinkers. Well, she was 99. She could have just died in her sleep. Well, yeah. But what are the odds that it would happen on New Year's Eve? That's the dead giveaway. You have to look at this thing from a spiritual vantage point, okay? We are too close to the end to be simple-minded, okay? To be thinking carnally from a two-dimensional level. We have to look at things from a spiritual vantage point, okay? Now, let's continue. So scrolling up a bit more, and the article reads, beloved actress, comedian, and American icon Betty White has died just weeks before a milestone birthday. Another dead giveaway. TMZ has learned. Law enforcement sources tell TMZ Betty passed away at her home just before 9:30 a.m. Friday. Pause. Okay, let's pause right there. Now, she died just before 9:30. What would be just before 9:30? To me, this is an allusion to 9:29, which is also just an allusion to 9/11 or 9/11. Okay? Now, that may have went over people's head. 9:29. Okay? When you take the 29, 2 plus 9 is 11. Okay? That's why I said that's an allusion to 9/11. Okay? And again, notice today is what? Friday, right? So New Year's Eve just so happened to fall on Friday, which would be in veneration of who? Freya or Frigga. Okay? Again, like I said before, this to me, according to my critique, was a sacrifice based on what little I know. Okay? This is just the surface. Okay, I haven't even done much digging concerning this matter. And look at everything that we see thus far. Okay? But anyway, let's continue. It says, a trailblazer and pioneer in media, Betty had the longest running career for any woman in TV prior to her death, starring in multiple shows over the past 8 decades. Wow. It says starting way back in 1939. Wow. So it goes on to say Betty is perhaps most famous for her lead role as Rose Nyland in The Golden Girls, which ran from 1985 to 1992. She'd been in tons of other big hits throughout her life. Okay? So, from this part of the article, again, it says she died right before 9:30, which I believe they're alluding to 9:29, which of course is just an allusion to 9/11. Okay? So now let's go to the Gematria Calculator and let me show you why I believe this is an allusion to 9/11. Okay? So this is the Gematria Calculator, and I have a split screen showing her first name and her second name, right? So of course her first name is Betty, okay? And as you can see, Betty comes out to a value of 72, okay? And when you break that down to the simplest form, as you can see, it equals 9. Of course, 7 plus 2 equals 9. And when you look across the board at the English ordinal, the full reduction, the reverse ordinal, and the reverse full reduction, all of it breaks down to 9. And she just so happened to have died at 99 years old. Coincidence? I'll let you be the judge. Now, let's go down and let's look at her last name, which is White. And as you can see, her last name equates or comes out to a numerical value of 65, right? And when you break 65 down to its simplest form, it comes out to what? 11. Of course, 6 plus 5 is 11. Now, what did we say about her first name? It breaks down to a value of 9. And her last name breaks down to a value of what? 11. 911 or 911, emergency. Could this be an allusion to there's going to be a big emergency starting next year? Okay. Is it going to be a time of emergency, of havoc, maybe? Could 2022 be a doozy, like I've been saying? Oh, boy. But anyway, yeah. This is what I was talking about when we read the article, when it said that she died right before 9:30. As I said, I believe that was an allusion to them saying she died maybe at 9:29, which that in and of itself is an allusion to 9/11 or 911. Okay? So now, this is an article from numerology.com. And I believe I've actually used this slide in one of my past videos, okay? But here again, it still applies, right? And it's dealing with the number 9. And I'm going here because, of course, Betty White died at 99 years old, okay? So we're going to show the significance of the number 9, okay? And it reads, what is the definition of 9 in numerology? The energy of the number 9 represents completion, but not finality. Think of it more in a cyclical sense, right? It's about the ending of one cycle and the potential it creates for another cycle to begin again. This just shows me that this was a sacrifice based on what we just read. Let's read that sentence again. It says it's about the ending of one cycle and the potential it creates for another cycle to begin. Hence, she died on New Year's Eve. It's the end of one cycle or the end of one year and the beginning of a new cycle or the beginning of a new year. This is why she was sacrificed on New Year's Eve at 99 years old, because we're reading what the number 9 represents. Okay? So now, reading on, it says the 9 in numerology acts as an usher in this process of transition or transformation. Now, please keep that in mind, that the number 9 acts as an usher in the process of transition. Okay, keep that in mind. Guiding and empowering us with wisdom. It absorbs answers from a spiritual source, then delivers them to us in the real world. Okay, they're going off. But now that we have that information about the number 9, okay, it represents the end of one cycle. Okay, because again, the number 9 is the end of the single digits, right? Right before the double digits come into play. So that's why the number 9 represents the end of one cycle and the beginning of a new. Now, Betty White died at 99. Now let's look at that. 99 is the end of, or the last number in the double digit cycle, right? Right before the triple digits, right? So it represents the same thing. It's just double, right? And we know on the left-hand side, when you have double numbers, they're known as master numbers. I touched on this in one of my past videos as well, right? So now that we have that information on the number 9, how about we transition to the deity that's being venerated tonight, which is Janus, okay? And again, keep in mind what we read about the number 9 and how the number 9 represents what? Transition, okay? So as we can see here, this is an article I found about Janus, and it reads, who is Janus? It seems like the ancient Romans had a god or goddess for everything. Poseidon, god of the sea, Venus, goddess of love and beauty, and Apollo, god of the sun, just to name a few. Other well-known Roman gods include Jupiter, Saturn, Mercury, Mars, Neptune, Orcus, Ceres, which Ceres really has something to do with this day as well, okay? This is going into the Sirius star, or the dog star. That's why they dropped that ball in Times Square that represents what? The dog star coming down, right? But I'm not going to get too in-depth with that, okay? We're going to focus on Janus, right? And it goes on to say Juno, Luna, Diana, and Vesta, right? And it said, and then there's Janus, a lesser-known god, but arguably one of the most important. Then it goes on to say what? In Roman mythology, Janus was the god of doors, gates, and, transitions. Now, what did we just read about the number 9? The number 9 represents what? Transition, right? And we see here that the Roman god Janus was the god of what? Transitions, as well as the doors and gates, right? I've spoke about this before in my other videos concerned when I, touched on the topic of the Pope, and which we're going to talk about more in depth in this video, okay? But the point being is we just read about the number 9 and how it represents transition. And now we see that the Roman god Janus represents the same thing, right? And that's who's being venerated today, today and tomorrow, which is so-called New Year's Day, right? Now, reading forward, it says what? Janus represented the middle ground between both concrete and abstract dualities, such as life and death, beginning and end, youth and adulthood, rural, urban, war, peace, and barbarism and civilization, right? So ultimately, what is it saying? That Janus is what? He's the god that represents duality. Okay, that's what Janus represents. And we're going to get into that when we talk about the depiction of Janus, that two-headed depiction. Okay? So now, scrolling up a bit, and it reads, Janus was known as the initiator of human life, transformation between stages of life, and shifts from one historical era to another. Could this be an allusion to 2022? Are we going into another historical era? Something to think about. But anyway, let's continue. Ancient Romans believed Janus ruled over life events such as weddings, births, and deaths. He oversaw seasonal events such as planting, harvest, seasonal changes, and the new year. Hence, this is who's being venerated tonight and tomorrow. Okay? Now continuing on, and it reads, according to Roman mythology, Janus was present at the beginning of the world as the god of the gates. Janus guarded the gates of heaven and held access to heaven and other gods. Okay, this is why he's often depicted with keys. But we're going to get into that a little later on. Okay? For this reason, Janus was often invoked first in ancient Roman religious ceremonies. And during public sacrifices, offerings were given to Janus before any other deity. In fact, there is evidence that Janus was worshipped long before any of the other Roman gods, dating all the way back to the time of Romulus, okay, the founder and first ruler of Rome. Okay, now, with that being said, let's continue. So scrolling up a bit more, and it reads, and if you've ever wondered how the month of January got its name, you have Janus to thank. That's who's being venerated tonight and tomorrow. Okay? everybody that's going out celebrating so-called New Year's, okay? You're, indulging in paganism, okay? You're venerating a Roman god named Janus, okay? Whether you believe it or not, okay? And that's serious, okay? You're not supposed to indulge in idol worship, okay? That's, in fact, the chief sin that, unfortunately, we've always indulged in as the children of Israel, okay? That's why we're in this situation we're in right now, okay? But anyway, it goes on to say, as the Roman god of beginnings and transition, just like the number 9 represents, remember? The number 9 represents transition. This is why, according to my critique, I believe Betty White was sacrificed for Janus, okay? For the new year, all right? But continuing on, it says Janus is the namesake of January, the first month of a new year. Now, it goes on to say, why does Janus have 2 faces? What is unusual about the god Janus is the iconic image. As the god of transitions and dualities, Janus is portrayed with 2 faces, one facing the past and one facing the future. That's what it represents, okay? The past and the future, right? But what they're not showing in this particular depiction, most other depictions actually show, yes, 2 faces facing the opposite directions, but one of an older man with a beard and one of a younger man without a beard, okay? And what they don't tell you is that actually is a representation of Cush and Nimrod. Okay, that's really what that represents, okay? But anyway, continuing on, it says, he also holds a key in his right hand, which symbolizes his protection of doors, gates, thresholds, and other separations or openings between spatial boundaries. In ancient Rome, the symbol of the key also signified that a traveler has come to find safe harbor or trade goods in peace. Okay, so with that being said, let me show you this depiction of what I was talking about. See here? This is the depiction I was talking about, or at least one of them, right? You have on the left, you have the older man facing the left with the beard, which represents what? It represents the past, but it also represents who? Cush, for you brothers that's in the know, okay? That's into the scriptures, okay? He represents Cush. Then, of course, the younger man that's facing the opposite direction without the beard, he represents his son Nimrod, okay? And notice when you look at Cush, when you look at the top of his head, they're depicting him with horns, right? Because, in ancient times, what do horns represent? Horns represent what? Power or rulership, okay? There was once upon a time, Cush and Nimrod, they ruled over Rome, but at the time it was known as Saturnia. Okay, it wasn't called Rome at the time, or Italy. It was called Saturnia. Okay. Now, with that being said, I don't want brothers and sisters to get confused. Now, this is Esau's version of Cush and Nimrod. Okay, known as Janus, but the actual biblical figures, Cush and Nimrod, who were actual people that actually lived, they were Cushites, aka Ethiopians. So they were not Caucasian, okay? They were actually black people, okay? People of color, they were black people. Now, they weren't our people, because all black people are not the same, okay? They were Hamites, okay? They were black, but they were Hamites, okay? They come from Noah's son, Ham, right? We, the children of Israel, okay? We are black people, of course, but we come from Noah's son, Shem. We come from the line of Shem, all right? Remember, after the flood, the world was repopulated through Noah's 3 sons. It was Ham, Shem, and Japheth. Okay, I don't know why I wanted to say Cush, but it was Ham, Shem, and Japheth. Okay, now, of course, like I just said, the people like Cush and Nimrod, they come from Noah's son Ham, but the children of Israel, which is us, we come from Noah's son Shem. Okay, now that we have that information, let's deal with the Pope. Okay, and when you look at this thumbnail that I created, it says the Pope is a microcosm of Janus, the Roman god of the doorway. Okay, now, of course, I don't really have to explain that because we just read all of the information about Janus and how he represents the doors or the doorway and, what the key represents, right? But now people may be thinking, well, what does that have to do with the Pope? Okay, well, like it says right here, the Pope is a microcosm of Janus. Okay, the Pope represents the doorway or the bridge between or from the spiritual world to the physical world, the same way as Janus. Okay, Janus represents the same thing. That's why the Pope is a microcosm of Janus. Okay, now let me show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so this is the Webster's definition of the word cardinal. Now, why is this significant before we even go any further? Okay, why am I bringing up the word cardinal? Okay, because when you're dealing with Roman Catholicism, okay, the Pope's closest supporters and advisors are whom? Okay, it's the cardinals, right? It's a cardinal, right? But now let's look at what the word cardinal actually means. Okay, so it says our word cardinal goes back to the Latin adjective cardinalis, which meant serving as a hinge. Let's continue. The root of this word is the noun cardo, meaning hinge. Now it should be making sense. Okay, but let's continue. Since a hinge is the device on which a door turns, cardo came to mean something on which a development turns or something very important. Now I'm gonna stop right there. Okay, but you see the word cardinal breaks down to the word cardo, which means hinge. Okay, and what they didn't say is this: a hinge is also used to do what? To hold up a door or support a door as well. Okay, but the very fact that the word cardinal means hinge, okay, and within the Catholic Church you have cardinals. So what does that say about the Pope? If the cardinals are the hinge, then that would mean that the Pope is the door, aka Janus. Okay, you got to understand this. All this stuff is spiritual. You have to look at everything from a spiritual vantage point. Okay, the Pope is a microcosm of the Roman god Janus. Okay, that's why I tell brothers, listen, Christianity, which is just an offshoot of the Roman Catholic Church, has nothing to do with the Bible. Okay, Christianity, which is an offshoot of the Roman Catholic Church, simply goes back to what? The mystery school system of ancient Babylon and ancient Kemet. That's it. Now, if you still don't believe me for whatever reason, let's put the icing on the cake. Okay? Now, if you look closely at the next slide here, this is actually a picture of an aerial view of Vatican City. Okay? Now, if you look closely, you see here that Vatican City is shaped like a keyhole. Okay? It's shaped like a keyhole. Now, a lot of y'all may be saying, that's a keyhole? No, think about the old school keys. that you would put into one of those old school doors. It was shaped like this. Okay. And this just goes to show you why, again, I say that the Pope represents Janus, who is the so-called god of the doorways. Okay. He holds the keys. Okay. That's who the Pope represents. Okay. That's why Vatican City, from an aerial view, is shaped like a keyhole. Okay. And if you still don't believe that, okay, let's do a Google search on keyholes. Okay. Let's go to Google Images and let's type in keyhole and let's see what comes up. And let's do a side by side. Okay. So let's scroll over a bit and here we go. Okay. So if you look on the right hand side, that's the Google search on Google Images. As you see, I simply typed in keyhole. Okay. And those are the images that came up. And if you look at the left hand side, again, that's the aerial view of Vatican City. And as you see, it's shaped like a keyhole because the Pope represents Janus, who's the so-called god of the doorway or the god of doors. Okay. That's whom the Pope represents. Okay. And tonight, which is New Year's Eve, you're venerating Janus if you're celebrating New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. Okay. That's it. That's who's being venerated. It's Janus. Okay. That's why New Year's is on January 1st. Again, we already read that the month of January is named after Janus. Okay. So having said that, let's take a look at this article from history.com concerning New Year's resolutions, right? Because that's another, another thing that people do, on New Year's or for New Year's. Okay. They make these resolutions that, 9 times out of 10, they never keep. Okay. But anyway, the article reads, the ancient Babylonians are said to have been the first people to make New Year's resolutions some 4,000 years ago. They were also the first to hold recorded celebrations in honor of the new year. Now watch this, watch closely. Though for them, the year began not in January, but in mid-March. Pause. You want to know why that is? That's because that's when the new year begins. Okay? The new year begins in the springtime. Okay? When the planet Earth itself is letting you know everything is new. When the flowers are blossoming, all the animals start coming out of hibernation, the trees, they're green again, no leaves falling and things like that. The time of year when the earth itself is telling you everything is new, that's when a new year begins. Okay, makes sense? But anyway, let's continue. When the crops were planted, it says during a massive 12-day religious festival known as Akitu, the Babylonians crowned a new king or reaffirmed their loyalty to the reigning king. They also made promises to the gods to pay their debts and return any objects they had borrowed. These promises could be considered the forerunners of our New Year's resolution again. This is paganism. Even that custom of a New Year's resolution, you're paying homage to different pagan gods. Okay, but let's continue. If the Babylonians kept to their word, their pagan gods would bestow favor on them for the coming year. If not, they would fall out of the gods' favor, a place no one wanted to be. So the customs of New Year's celebration just goes back to ancient pagan idol worship. Okay? Let's scroll up a bit more, and it reads, a similar practice occurred in ancient Rome after the reformminded Emperor Julius Caesar tinkered with the calendar and established January 1st as the beginning of the new year, circa 46 BC, named for Janus. Pause. Again, now this is another witness. This is a completely different, article, and it's saying the same thing. Okay, so you have Julius Caesar to thank for January the 1st being deemed the new year. Okay, and he did that in veneration of the Roman god Janus. Okay, this is hook, line, and sinker right here. Okay, I could really stop the video here, but we're gonna continue. Okay, but it just makes no sense at all if you just think about this logically. Why would a new year begin in the dead of winter when nothing is new outside? Can anybody make that make sense for me? Okay, but anyway, let's continue. It says, the two-faced God whose spirit inhabited doorways and arches. Okay, January had special significance for the Romans, believing that Janus symbolically looked backwards into the previous year and ahead into the future. That's where you get that depiction from, right? The Romans offered sacrifices to the deity and made promises of good conduct for the coming year. Again, this is why I say, if you are celebrating tonight, you are dabbling in paganism, okay? Idol worship. Believe it or not, okay? So now let's get into what the real New Year is, okay? And as you can see on the screen, I have 3 scriptures posted, okay? And we're going to get into all 3 of them. Now, the first one is Exodus chapter 12 and verse 2, and it reads, this month shall be unto you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year to you. Okay, so whatever month this is, okay, this is the beginning of months, meaning what? It's a new year. Okay, this is what the true new year is. Now, what is the name of that month? Okay, let's look at the next verse. This is Exodus chapter 13 and verse 4, and it reads, this day came ye out in the month of Abib. Okay, now the name of the month, of course, is Abib, and we're going to get into the meaning of what that is in a moment here. Okay, now what does the verse mean when it says this day came ye out? Okay, let's look at the next verse and let's get the answer. This is Deuteronomy 16 and 1, and it reads, observe the month of Abib and keep the Passover unto Yahweh thy power. For in the month of Abib, Yahweh thy power brought thee forth out of Egypt by night. Okay, that's what Exodus 13 and 4 meant when it said, this day came ye out. It was talking about when we came out of the land of Egypt, when Yahweh delivered us out of the land of Egypt by way of Moses. Okay, but the point being is the month of Abib is the new year, and we see here that Passover takes place during the month of Abib. Now, when is Passover? Passover is in what? The springtime. Okay, this lets you know when the new year truly begins. Okay, now let's end this lesson by going into the Strong's and getting the definition of the word Abib. Okay, let's get to it. Okay, so going into the blue letter, getting the Strong's definition. So this is Strong's H24, Abib. Okay, and now we're gonna see what the Strong's definition is for the word Abib. Okay, let's scroll down a bit here. And this is the Strong's definition for the word Abib. And it reads, from an unused root, meaning to be tender. Now, that's actually amazing to me because it says to be tender, which shows that the Most High Yahweh was tender and had compassion upon the children of Israel for, delivering us out of the hands of the Egyptians. That's why we came out in the month of Abib. Okay? Yahweh is so amazing, right? But anyway, continuing on, and it reads, green, i.e., a young ear of grain. Hence, the name of the month Abib or Nisan, right? Then it goes on to say Abib, ear, green ears of corn, not maize, right? So now let's scroll up a bit more. And this is the outline of biblical usage. And it reads, fresh, young barley ears, barley. Now watch closely. Month of ear forming, of greening of crop. Now you're not going to get that in the wintertime. It says of growing green Abib, month of Exodus and Passover. Watch closely. March or April. Okay. And this is the beginning of months, as the scripture says. Okay. Or the beginning of the year in the month of Abib, which takes place between March and April, aka springtime. Okay? It makes no sense at all for a new year to start in the dead part of winter when nothing is new in nature. But it actually does make sense for a new year to begin when everything in nature is new again. Okay? You have to make it make sense. Okay? But anyway, I believe this is actually a good place to end the video. And again, I gotta shorten this title. But Betty White dead at 99 on New Year's Eve. Was it natural causes or something more sinister? New Year's Day and the veneration of Janus. Now, of course, according to my critique, and this is just my critique, not saying it's true, dealing with Betty White, but I believe it was a sacrifice based on the little bit of information I have right now. I might do a little more digging, if the spirit comes on me. But as far as I see right now, it looks like a sacrifice, based upon everything I presented in the video thus far, right? And of course, the main part of this video was dealing with, New Year's Eve and Janus and, the Pope and the, the New Year's resolution and all that bad stuff, right? But anyway, of course, as always, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Ruach HaKodesh. I want to thank all you brothers and sisters for tuning in. And until next time, Shalom, family.